Hi everyone, and welcome to another installment of Terrifying Trios. This time we're exploring the darkest depths of space. Our theme is aliens. Content warning. The following book and movies contain graphic violence, including death by alien attack, which includes creatures that burst out of living human bodies and/or eventually absorb their victims as part of their life cycle, blood, assorted gore, discussions of physical and sexual violence, and more. Viewer and reader discretion is advised. And as always, spoilers ahead. Our first film this time is Alien. This sci-fi horror classic, directed by Ridley Scott, tells the story of the crew of the Nostromo, a spaceship with an artificial intelligence called Mother. This entity is what awakens the crew unexpectedly. They're returning to Earth after completing a job in deep space. But since the ship has picked up what seems to be a distress signal, they have to pause in their journey to investigate. From the start, viewers can see there's some tension within the crew. Officers are better paid than the engineers who work on maintaining the Nostromo, and while the terms of their employment were agreed to in advance, the detour to a strange planet complicates things. Parker, one of the engineers, is particularly outspoken about workers' rights in this situation, while Brett, his counterpart, is less articulate. In the end, the crew agrees to observe company policy, in part because that way everyone will be compensated for their time and work. And really, they don't have much choice. The nature of the crew's work changes after they visit the planet where the distress signal came from. Kane, the executive officer, is attacked by a mysterious creature inside the remains of an alien vessel. The thing covers his face and leaves him unable to move or speak, though he's still alive. His crewmates, Lambert and Dallas, the captain, are able to bring him back to the ship, but Ripley, the ship's warrant officer, informs them that quarantine protocol has to be followed. She can't immediately let the trio back in and expose everyone on board to whatever they encountered outside. Then Ash, the ship's science officer, ignores this rule and lets the three back in. Ash finds that while Kane is still alive, attempting to remove the creature covering his face causes its tail-like appendage to begin strangling him, and cutting into the thing reveals that its blood, or similar fluid, is a kind of acid able to burn through several decks of the ship. By this time, tempers have mostly cooled. Lambert was angry at Ripley for trying to follow quarantine procedure, and Ripley was angry at Ash for violating that rule and jeopardizing the lives of the whole crew in the process. But then Kane wakes up. The creature covering his face seems to have died, and while discovering the remains of an insect-like alien makes for a good jump scare, Kane's recovery puts everyone in a better humor, and the crew sits together for a meal before planning to return to suspended animation. This meal is a famous moment in horror. John Hurt plays Kane, and he really sells the gruesome nature of this scene. While eating with his crewmates, he seemingly begins to choke. Racked with pain, he collapses onto the table, and then, as he screams in agony, something bursts out of his chest. This new incarnation of the alien creature then flees the room. Kane's body is given a kind of burial at sea. It's launched into space, and the rest of the crew begin to search the ship for the alien. While Brett, one of the engineers, is searching a lower level of the ship, he encounters Jones, the ship's cat. It should be noted that in the director's cut of this film, in the first two acts you have an equal chance of being jump-scared by the xenomorph or Jonesy. Brett next runs into the alien, now fully grown, and both disappear. After the crew realizes that the alien must be using the air ducts to get around the ship, Captain Dallas begins to search, wielding a makeshift flamethrower while Lambert and the others track him with the computer. He too disappears, and Parker manages to recover his flamethrower. It's at this point that, given the dire nature of their circumstances, Lambert suggests that they flee in the escape shuttle. With Dallas dead, Ripley is in command, and she points out that the shuttle doesn't have adequate life support for 4 passengers. The search for the alien continues, until Ripley, now armed with the captain's access codes, learns that Mother awoke the crew because it knew about the alien species. The company that owns the Nostromo wanted Ash to recover a xenomorph sample for study, and he was ordered to treat the rest of the crew as expendable. Ripley, furious, goes looking for Ash, and he attempts to kill her before Lambert and Parker intervene. In fighting him, The three are able to injure Ash to the point that his head comes off. It turns out he isn't human. He's an android, and after reactivating his head, he tells the surviving trio of humans that the alien is virtually unkillable. He makes it clear that he doubts they'll survive, and after Ripley shuts off Ash's head, Parker burns the android up with the flamethrower. Now, at least with just 3 people to worry about, the escape shuttle plan is viable. However, Parker and Lambert are taken by the alien while gathering supplies. Obviously, Ripley thought they'd be safer moving as a pair, but now she's on her own, except for Jonesy, the cat. She's able to get him into a carrier because Jonesy is Cinema's most cooperative cat, but in searching the ship, she discovers the remains of the rest of the crew. Dallas, at least, is still able to talk, though he only repeats the words, "Kill me." And Ripley incinerates their bodies so the alien can't further absorb them. One of the biggest conflicts in Act 3 is that Ripley, for obvious reasons, wants to kill the alien. Before she can get to the escape shuttle, the alien cuts her off. She retreats and tries to abort the self-destruct order, but it's too late. She narrowly manages to escape the alien and reach the shuttle, and less than a minute after launching, with Jonesy in his carrier, Ripley watches the Nostromo explode. Thinking she's won, Ripley prepares to enter suspended animation until the escape shuttle makes it back to an inhabited part of space. It's at this point that she realizes why the alien didn't try to kill her the second time she made a break for the shuttle. The alien is on the shuttle too. Slowly, carefully, Ripley gets inside a spacesuit. She's already dumped Jonesy into the pod where she'll be sleeping, so once she's inside a suit, she's able to open the doors, sending the alien out into space. It tries to hang on, but by starting the engines, Ripley finally manages to kill the xenomorph. She sends a message explaining that she's the only survivor of the Nostromo, and then she and Jonesy go into stasis to return home. This film is a classic for many reasons. Though the Nostromo seems big when Ripley is running for her life, it's also claustrophobic. The sets are incredible, long corridors and narrow passages packed with equipment, and the cast of 7, plus 1 cat and 1 alien, really sell the idea that this is a kind of locked room murder mystery in space. Ian Holm as Ash is delightfully creepy, especially once the audience knows who he really is. And when it comes to horror, several members of this cast boast impressive resumes. Sigourney Weaver obviously played Ripley in several Alien films, but here we also have Harry Dean Stanton as Brett. He was in Christine, Red Dawn, and The Green Mile, as well as Veronica Cartwright, who acted in The Birds as a child, as well as having a role in Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The company that owns the ship and employs the crew looms large over the story. In the end, it isn't a lone alien that's the biggest threat, but rather capitalism, a system in which a dangerous alien is more valuable than several human lives. Of course, the alien is a serious threat too, but it can also be seen as a metaphor for capitalism, eating and growing without conscience, leaving death and destruction in its wake. H.R. Geiger's excellent creature designs are among the best in movie monster history. I give this film 4.5 lucky stars out of 5. Our second film this month is Alien, Romulus. After a brief prologue, in which we see a ship recover the remains of the Nostromo, including a xenomorph-shaped pod, we meet Rain and Andy. Rain dreams of seeing a sunset one day, having grown up on a small outpost of the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, where less than 3,000 humans make their home. There is no daylight on this world, and at the start of the movie, Rain goes to the company office to try and get off-world, now that she has worked the 12,000 hours required of her. She is then informed that due to a shortage of workers related to illness, like the lung disease that killed her parents, the company has doubled the number of hours necessary to legally leave the planet. Upset, Rain leaves, only to find some kids attacking Andy. His whitish blood reveals him to be an android, specifically an ND unit that her father was able to fix up. His directive is to do what's best for Rain, and she generally treats him like a brother. Rain then gets a call from Tyler, who has access to a ship called the Corbellin 4. We also meet his sister, Kay, as well as Navarro, the pilot, and Bjorn, Tyler and Kay's cousin and Navarro's adopted brother. Tyler explains that there's a derelict ship of some kind orbiting the planet, and if they can get to it before it crashes into the asteroid belt surrounding their world, there are enough cryopods to get them to Yavaga 3, a planet that isn't company-controlled. However, they have less than 2 days before the ship will be destroyed by its decaying orbit. Rain wonders why she's been asked to join the group, and the truth is, they really need Andy. He's a company android, and has the required clearance to unlock doors aboard the ship. Rain agrees to go along, though she hesitates after Bjorn insists that Andy isn't really her brother, let alone a person at all. Watching a group of miners, she realizes that this will be her fate if she doesn't go with Tyler's group. So, Rain and Andy ride into space, their first trip off-world, and soon they dock with the huge vessel. Tyler, Bjorn, and Andy will go to find the cryopods, and Rain asks Andy if he's really okay with this trip. He insists that he wants to do what's best for her, and though Rain hugs him, it's clear she has misgivings about something. It turns out that going to Yavaga 3 will mean she has to leave him behind, since androids like him are illegal there. If, like me, you've read the Murderbot Diaries series by Martha Wells, some of this might be how you're picturing a movie based on that book series. Once they're docked with the derelict vessel, Andy just has to put his finger into an opening on the door panel, and the ship lets the trio inside. Rain, Navarro, and Kay watch them move via the camera feeds inside their ship. As they make their way toward the cryopods, Bjorn is extremely hostile toward Andy, and when Rain asks about this, Navarro explains that his mother was killed in a mining mishap, and an artificial human was responsible. Rain is confused, since androids can't normally allow humans to die, but Navarro explains that the android, in letting 3 humans die, saved 12 others. Meanwhile, the 3 on the derelict vessel learn that at regular intervals, the gravity turns back on. At one point, Bjorn has a painful fall to the floor below him. When Tyler gets to the pods, he finds that they only have enough fuel for 3 years. They'll need more to make it to Yavaga 3. Luckily, he has an instrument that lets him detect different temperatures aboard the vessel, and he leads Bjorn and Andy onward. By this time, Bjorn has threatened to attack Andy with a taser, after which Andy grabs him, not out of anger, but to save him from falling in a hole that could have killed him. Nearby, another android's remains are lying on the ground. Tyler thinks it must have succumbed to some kind of chemical burns. Back on the Corbellin 4, Kay suddenly throws up. Navarro doesn't seem too surprised, and she goes down to the cargo hold to examine the cryopods. When Rain gets Kay into her bunk, Kay confesses that she's not sick, but pregnant, and she wants her child to see sunshine. Rain, at Kay's insistence, promises not to tell Tyler, and Navarro stands in the light below deck, clearly contemplating a better future. This is the point in every Alien movie where things are, for the moment, mostly going okay, though obviously the evidence is mounting that the group is about to encounter serious danger. Once they get to a lab where Tyler has detected fuel for the cryopods, Andy lets them in, and Tyler finds the canisters they'll need. He and Bjorn pull one out, and though the extreme cold hurts Bjorn's hands, it's clear, given all the standing water, that the room is actually warming up now that the power is back on. However, when an emergency alarm goes off, Andy doesn't have the necessary clearance to open the lab door. It isn't fully closed, but they can't do more than reach a hand through the gap. Rain and Navarro venture onto the vessel. With the power on, it's easier to find their way, and they soon reach the room where the dead android was left on the ground. Rain knows that with this other android's module, Andy can open the door, and she manages to extract it, though the android boots up long enough to fight her. Hurrying to the lab, Rain passes the module through the gap in the door, and Tyler puts it into the panel on Andy's neck. He then freezes while rebooting. Meanwhile, we the audience can see that there are racks of immature xenomorphs near the back of the room. At first, they're still, but as the ship's temperature rises, they begin to revive and move, and several drop into the water. Tyler and Bjorn hear the odd sound and investigate, at which point they're attacked by several facehuggers. Bjorn uses the taser he found to fend them off, and though Tyler is briefly knocked unconscious, Andy reboots just in time to grab the alien that had leapt at his face. He throws it into a lighting fixture, killing it. Navarro, in watching Rain try to open the door for the others, is clearly fearful of the creatures moving around in the lab. Andy's new module lets him open the door, and the group flees as the facehuggers pursue them. They're able to trap most of them behind closed doors, but one manages to get ahead of the rest, and it attaches itself to Navarro's face. Everyone wants to help, but they can see that if you try and remove the creature, it begins to choke their friend. Andy points out that they can ask the android in the other room what to do. They reboot the other android, and it introduces itself as Rook. It's the same model as Ash from the first film, and it too was a science officer, though now only the upper half of its body remains. By this time, Rain has noticed the dramatic changes in Andy. His speech is smoother, and his knowledge of science has obviously increased. When she tries to remove the module, he stops her, explaining that it is repairing him and updating his AI. Rook tells the group that Navarro's chances aren't good. Even when they use some of the cryofuel to burn the tail off the facehugger, he says there's a 60-40 chance that she's already become a host for alien life. He tells them about the xenomorph, and as the humans move back toward their ship, an awake but clearly traumatized Navarro in tow, Rook stops Andy and quietly tells him that humans are too emotional to do what needs to be done for the safety of the others. Obviously, Rook has implied that Navarro is a danger to Rain. Andy moves to stop the group's progress, but Bjorn slows him down, and Navarro makes it to the ship. By this time, though, she's feeling unwell, and after starting the ship's engines, Kay asks her what's wrong. Navarro uses the X-ray tool she found on the other ship and reveals that there is indeed something growing inside of her. Rain and Tyler can only watch as the ship takes off without them. Andy, too, is stuck on the derelict side of the airlock. However, the sudden appearance of an immature xenomorph chest-bursting its way out of Navarro causes the ship to lose control, and they crash into a hangar on the other vessel. Now, there are a couple of problems. Rain and Tyler need to get back to the ship, but Tyler asks if Andy meant to kill Navarro, and Rain doesn't know. However, he can guide them to the hangar, so they have no choice but to follow him if they don't want to die in space. And on the ship, Kay wakes to find that Navarro is dead, and Bjorn, on a lower level, is preparing to try and kill the growing xenomorph with the taser. Though he seems to cause it pain, its acid blood drips onto him and soon kills him. At the same time, Andy explains that the creatures have no eyes. Facehuggers use sound to hunt, so if he raises the temperature to that of the average human, Rain and Tyler can move safely through a room full of xenomorphs, provided they stay silent. Of course, this is soon impossible, since they are startled by the discovery of a corpse. Then Kay calls Tyler. He manages to tell her where the key to the door she's nearest to is, but after opening it, something happens, and the sound cuts off suddenly. Tyler, worried for his sister, is sweating profusely, and the aliens have taken notice. Andy tells the two humans to run, and they race through the corridor after him. He arrives first and nearly shuts a door on Tyler, who just manages to make it through. Rain chides him, but he points out that he calculated the timing perfectly. And of course, they know Kay is in danger, so they have to hurry on their way. Kay wakes to find herself in the ship's hold. She fell, and has had at least 2 concussions already today, out of reach of the xenomorph, which was still emerging from its cocoon. She then sees it carry away the bodies of Navarro and Bjorn, and she manages to make it to a lower door just in time to be jump-scared by her brother Tyler, standing on the other side. However, when Andy sees the xenomorph through the glass, coming for Kay, he refuses to open the door. Rain and Tyler beg him to open it, and Rain even explains that Kay is pregnant, but Andy refuses, and Kay is taken by the xenomorph. Rain, now certain that this isn't the Andy she's known all her life, asks what his directive is. He says he has a new one, given to him by Rook. Retrieve something important for the company. He tells Rain and Tyler that Rook won't open the docking bay doors until he completes his mission, so they all need to continue, and may yet survive. So, the trio make their way to the Romulus side of the vessel. There, they find yet another lab, this one full of evidence that the people who retrieved the wreckage of the Nostromo were doing experiments involving xenomorphs. Rook provides an explanation. It's clear, given the state of the colony they're orbiting above, that humans aren't really built to colonize space. So, why not help them become stronger, better able to recover from injury and disease? By experimenting with the xenomorph, scientists managed to extract a compound called Z01, which allows other creatures to harness the aliens' adaptability. Experiments with rats proved that the compound worked, and when Andy takes a canister of Z01, he explains that Rook will let the trio back onto the ship, but he's tracking the canister, so they have to deliver it. Rain and Tyler are given guns, though Andy instructs them not to shoot the xenomorphs, since their blood will burn through the ship's hull and kill everyone via explosive decompression. Back in the lab, we see on a screen playing a video of experiments that the rat, which was healed with Z01, eventually mutated into a hideous monster. Getting to the hangar means walking through a corridor full of xenomorph nests, which are themselves full of human victims. However, just as the trio have decided to turn around and find another route, Tyler hears Kay's voice. He runs to find her, and they manage to pull her down. She's injured, but alive. Andy guesses this is why she wasn't used as a host for a facehugger. The other dead humans, clearly the previous occupants of the ship, have all been dead for quite some time, while the xenomorphs, frozen in space, survived. Tyler considers using Z01 on Kay, but Rain stops him, pointing out that they don't know if they can trust Rook's words about the compound's efficacy. Andy agrees that if they can get Kay to a cryopod, she'll survive, so they hurry toward an elevator, but before they can board, Tyler protects Rain and Kay, and in the process is snatched up by a xenomorph lurking on the ceiling. In the ensuing struggle, Andy is tossed aside, and he begins to spasm. Rain and Kay make it onto the elevator. However, Rain can see Andy from a monitor, and she stops the elevator's progress to make sure that Kay can get back onto the ship herself. Then she climbs out and manually descends to go back for Andy. He's still spasming on the floor, and though he tries to stop her, she explains that she has to restart him, and in doing so, removes Rook's module. Andy, his original self again, apologizes to Rain, and she begins shooting xenomorphs. Yes, their blood could burn through the ship, but as long as the gravity is turned off, this won't be a problem. This is how the pair begin to climb up the elevator shaft. But of course, the artificial gravity recalibrates just in time for Rain to fall, only to be caught by a xenomorph. Andy manages to drop the elevator car onto the aliens pursuing them, and then he uses the last of the energy in Rain's gun, which she dropped during the climb, to kill the alien that grabbed her. Finally, the two make it back to their ship. Kay, it turns out, ignored Rook's insistence that the other two were dead and that she should turn on the autopilot. While waiting, though, clearly worried about her unborn child, Kay injected herself with Z01. With the autopilot on, Rook gets them off the Romulus module of the station before it crashes into the asteroid belt and starts to explode, and he begins to steer them back to the planet. However, Rain then simply turns off the autopilot, setting course for Yavaga 3. After plugging in Andy, so he'll have enough power for the years-long trip, Rain tells him to update his directive, and from then on, do what's best for us. Then, after getting Kay into a cryopod, Rain gets ready to freeze herself. But before she can, Kay gives birth. Z01 accelerated her baby's growth, and it caused it to be born in a cocoon. As usual, though, this xenomorph-like creature has acidic blood, and the pod burns its way down to the cargo hold. Rain grabs a canister of cryofuel and goes looking for the creature, but it manages to get back to Kay. Already, it's fully grown, a terrifying alien-human hybrid. And though Rain stops to try and help an injured Andy, he tells her to help Kay, who, by this time, has been killed by her mutated child. The cryofuel causes the ship's internal temperature to plummet. Ray manages to get inside a spacesuit before she freezes, and then she makes her way down to the cargo hold, determined to drop it, thus opening up the ship and hopefully sucking the alien out into space. However, after pulling 3 of the 4 levers necessary, the xenomorph hybrid catches up with her. Rain manages to use her tether to pull the last lever, and the alien drops down into the asteroid belt. After pulling herself back inside, Rain puts the injured Andy in a pod, not knowing what will happen when they reach Yavaga 3. She records a message before entering her own pod, and the movie ends as it began, with a dark ship moving through space. Rain, played by Kaylee Spaney, and Andy, played by David Johnson, are the stars of this film, and their characters are the most captivating of a talented cast. Over and over, you can ask what Andy owes Rain, if anything, and what Rain owes Andy. Their actions reveal how they feel about this question, and I'll echo many reviewers and say that their performances were a highlight. However, the use of Ian Holmes' digital likeness, he passed away in 2020, was definitely a creepy element of this film, and not in a fun horror movie way, but in the way that made me wonder who owns your likeness when you die. For now, this is more of an issue for actors, but everyone's ownership of their own digital legacy is going to be an interesting question in the coming decades. There were many, perhaps too many, nods to other Alien films, but that seems almost inevitable in modern sequels, except for Prey, which I'd argue is among the best Predator movies. Still, this was a strong entry in the Alien series, and I look forward to seeing what this new creative team does next. I give this film 3.5 facehuggers out of 5. Our book this month is The Scourge Between Stars by Ness Brown. In it, we meet Jacqueline Albright, a young woman who's become acting captain of the starship Calypso. Humanity's attempts to colonize an exoplanet ended in failure generations ago, and now Jacqueline knows that she probably won't live to see their return to Earth. Her mother and sister are dead, and now her father won't leave his cabin. So, she does her best to keep the ship going. There are thousands of lives on board, depending on her. But there are factions who wish to mutiny. An unsettling android who wears a faceplate similar to the one Jacqueline's sister wore before she died, and, disturbingly, noises in the walls of the ship. As Jacqueline helps with repairs, after the latest incursion by whatever is lurking in the dark of space, she hears something, and the sound doesn't go away. Then Jacqueline finds a body, and the ship's coroner has a strange report. The good news is that the murder victim wasn't killed by anyone whose DNA is in the ship's database. The bad news is that the DNA found at the scene isn't human at all. Something is on board the ship, and others in the fleet have, according to garbled transmissions, suffered horrible related fates. Jacqueline is determined to save as many lives as she can, but in doing so, she'll have to confront a secret kept by her father and face creatures who will do whatever they have to in order to survive. That means Jacqueline, too, will have to endure deadly radiation, explosive decompression, and whatever is out there that can't be seen in the pitch black of space. And in case you were wondering, yes, this book does contain a scene in which our heroine tries to blast alien attackers into the vacuum of space, since that's a genre staple at this point. This novella won't surprise anyone who's seen any of the Alien films, but I enjoyed it. By the end of the book, Jacqueline herself has become a human-alien hybrid, having been saved from life-threatening injuries by a sample of one of the creatures. While we don't know what awaits the Calypso when it reaches Earth, the novella ends on a reasonably hopeful note. That is, at least this group of humans will reach their destination, come what may. Ripley and Rain, were they not movie protagonists, would certainly share an ambiguous fate. After all, space is vast. That's a big part of its appeal, but it's also a rich vein of terror. As with any unknowable expanse, our imaginations will try to fill in the blanks. And anything could be lurking in the dark. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back again soon with another terrifying trio.